AITA for refusing to sign after my wife called me her temporary husband? I'm Jeremy, 43, and I had been married to Alyssa for 9 years by the time that dinner happened. I was the husband who kept old valet tickets in the cup holder for weeks, stayed up rewriting her speeches after she said they sounded flat, and told myself that swallowing one more small insult was the price of keeping peace. For a long time, I thought staying calm made me a good husband. What I didn't understand was that Alyssa had started mistaking my calm for permission. She wasn't always like that. When we first got together, her confidence was one of the things I loved most about her. Alyssa could walk into a room where she knew no one and leave with 3 invitations, 2 phone numbers, and a clear idea of who actually made the decisions. She was sharp without being cruel, ambitious without acting ashamed of the people who loved her before the ambition paid off. Back then, she rehearsed presentations at our kitchen counter while I made coffee. She would stop halfway through a sentence and say, "That sounded fake, didn't it?" "A little," I'd tell her. She would throw a dish towel at me, laugh, and start again. When things went well, she used to come home, kick off her shoes, and say, "We did it." Not "I did it." We. I never needed my name in a program or a public thank you. I liked being useful without being seen. I reviewed drafts, listened to practice pitches, and reminded her which executive had a daughter in college and which one hated being interrupted. I did it because I was proud of her, not because I wanted credit. The change was gradual enough that I kept explaining it away. First, she stopped thanking me in front of other people. Then she started editing me out of stories I had helped create. A speech we had worked on for 3 nights became something she had pulled together under pressure. An introduction I had arranged became a connection she had developed naturally. If I mentioned the truth later, she would squeeze my hand and say, "You know what I meant." Then Corinne became her boss. Corinne was 52 and had the kind of composure that made everyone else at a table check their posture. She rarely raised her voice. She didn't need to. She could insult someone in a tone that sounded like professional advice and make them thank her for it. The first time I met her, she looked me over at a cocktail reception and said, "So you're the quiet type." "I talk when I have something to say," I answered. Corinne smiled at Alyssa. "Useful. Every ambitious woman needs at least one person who doesn't compete for oxygen." Alyssa laughed. I didn't. On the drive home, I told her the comment bothered me. "She was complimenting you," Alyssa said. "She compared me to furniture. She said you were grounded." "That isn't what she said." Alyssa sighed and turned toward the passenger window. "Can you not turn everything into an ego thing?" That sentence became her favorite way to end conversations she didn't want to have. If I said she cut me off in front of her colleagues, it was my ego. If I said she introduced me as someone who didn't really understand this world, it was insecurity. If I asked why she had laughed when Corinne called me her domestic support system, I was being sensitive. I tried to explain the difference between needing praise and expecting respect. "I don't need you to brag about me," I told her one night after a dinner with her team. "I just need you not to shrink me in public." She was taking off her earrings in front of the mirror. "Nobody is shrinking you. You told them I'd be lost without you." It was a joke. "They laughed because you made me sound helpless." She dropped one earring into its tray. "Jeremy, these people tease each other. That's how they connect. You sit there looking offended, and then I have to manage everyone's discomfort." I stared at her reflection. "You think my reaction is the problem, not what you said. I think you don't understand the room." That was another phrase she picked up from Corinne. Around the same time, Adrian started appearing in almost every story Alyssa told about work. Adrian was 41, polished, quick with names, and always ready with a joke that sounded harmless until you thought about it for 10 seconds. He and Alyssa were paired on major presentations because, according to Corinne, they had complementary energy. At events, Adrian saved Alyssa a seat before I arrived. In group photos, he stood beside her with one hand hovering near the small of her back, never quite touching. He complimented her outfits in front of me, and then acted as if I was strange for noticing. Once, at a company brunch, he looked at Alyssa's tailored suit and said, "Now that looks like leadership." Then he glanced at me. "No offense, Jeremy, but some people are built for the front row. Some people keep the car warm." A couple of people laughed. I said, "That must be why you're always looking for someone else's seat." His smile tightened. Alyssa waited until we were alone to accuse me of being rude. "He insulted me first," I said. "He was kidding. So was I." "That's different." Why? Because you sounded angry. It was a small exchange, but it told me everything about the rules in Alyssa's new circle. They were allowed to disrespect me as long as they smiled. I was not allowed to answer unless I made them comfortable. I wasn't convinced Alyssa and Adrian were having an affair. I looked for the usual signs because I would be lying if I said the thought never crossed my mind. But there were no unexplained nights, no hidden second phone, no hotel charges, no sudden secrecy with passwords. What bothered me was almost harder to name. Alyssa liked the comparison. She liked being placed beside Adrian as the more impressive couple, even if they weren't actually a couple. She liked the social suggestion that he was the man who matched her momentum while I represented an earlier, quieter version of her life. Adrian enjoyed playing the role because it required no responsibility. He got admiration, flirtation, and the thrill of being treated like the better choice without having to show up when anything became difficult. I was the one who sat beside Alyssa when her confidence cracked at 2 in the morning. Adrian was the one who got photographed next to her after the speech I had helped fix. My younger sister Leah saw it before I was willing to say it out loud. One Sunday evening, she called while I was loading the dishwasher. She asked how Alyssa was doing, and I gave the usual answer. Busy. Stressed. The company has a big partnership coming up. And how are you doing? I'm fine. Leah was quiet for a second. That means not fine. I closed the dishwasher and leaned against the counter. I feel like I'm being trained. For what? To accept whatever happens in public and wait until we're alone to have feelings about it. Then when we're alone, I'm told the feelings are the real problem. Leah didn't soften her response. A wife who respects you doesn't need a room full of people laughing at you to prove she's powerful. It's not that bad. That's what people say when they're trying to survive something they don't want to name. I'm not surviving my marriage. Then stop talking like every dinner is a weather system you have to wait out. I told her she was being dramatic. She said, no. You're being careful because you already know what happens when you speak plainly. That stayed with me. So did something my friend Cole said a few weeks later. Cole had known me since before Alyssa. He was 44, dry, practical, and almost impossible to bait into an emotional reaction. We met for coffee, and I showed him the digital invitation to an upcoming company dinner. It was a formal sponsor event built around a partnership Alyssa's company had been pursuing for months. The agreement involved a 5-year sponsorship and resource commitment from an organization whose board had authorized me to execute the final documents. I wasn't the only person involved in reviewing the deal, and I wasn't pretending I had created it by myself. Lawyers, finance people, and board members had done most of the work. But the final agreement still required my signature because I was the designated representative approving the commitment. Alyssa knew that. She had known from the beginning. In fact, she had once joked at home that my signature was the only part of the process she couldn't charm into moving faster. The dinner was supposed to include a partnership recognition announcement after the speeches. Mr. Whitaker, the senior chairman overseeing the agreement on their side, would be there. Alyssa had been told she would be publicly recognized for helping bring the partnership together. She believed it would put her in line for a larger leadership role. Cole read the invitation, then looked at me. Why do you look like you're being summoned to court? Because Alyssa told me 3 times not to react if people joke around. Before anything happened? Yes. What kind of jokes? She said Corinne likes to roast people at these dinners. Cole set down his cup. That's not a warning. That's preloading blame. I'm probably reading too much into it. You've said that every time you've told me something concerning for the last year. I rubbed the edge of the receipt between my fingers. What do you think I should do? Don't give them a tantrum they can use. Let them talk. People like that usually explain themselves if you give them silence. I'm not going to record private conversations. I didn't tell you to. I said pay attention. Keep whatever they put in writing. Take a picture if something feels staged. Don't give them a scene. Give them a record. On the afternoon of the dinner, Alyssa acted like she was preparing an employee for a performance review. She stood at the bedroom mirror fastening her earrings while I adjusted my tie. That jacket is fine, she said. Good to know. I'm serious. Tonight matters. I know. So smile. Talk to people. Don't disappear into your phone. I don't do that. And if Corinne makes a joke, just go with it. I looked at her in the mirror. You've said that several times. Because you get that look. What look? The one where everyone can tell you're judging them. Maybe they can tell I don't like being insulted. She turned around. See? This is what I mean. Just be supportive for once. For once. You know what I mean. I picked up my wallet and the printed program she had left on the dresser. I'm starting to think I do. The venue had a wide lobby, a check-in table, and a wall displaying the company logo above a list of sponsors. Staff in black moved between the dining room and cocktail area carrying trays of champagne. At check-in, Alyssa was pulled aside by two colleagues almost immediately. Adrian appeared beside her as if he had been waiting for his cue. "You made it," he said to her, ignoring me for a full beat before adding, "Jeremy." "Adrian." He looked at my tie. "Very board approved." I smiled. "I left the car running for you." He gave a short laugh, but his eyes didn't. Alyssa touched my arm hard enough to be a warning. "Can you get our table number? I need to say hello to someone." I walked to the event coordinator's station. A woman with a headset was comparing place cards to a master seating list on a clipboard. When I gave her my name, she ran her finger down the page, then stopped. For a second, I saw it clearly. Jeremy, sponsor table 2 had been crossed out in blue ink. Beside it, someone had written temporary husband. The coordinator angled the clipboard toward herself, but not before I saw Corinne's initials next to the change. "Oh," she said. "You're at table 2. Why is my name crossed out?" Her face changed in the way people's faces do when they realize they've stepped into someone else's mess. The final seating chart came from Ms. Corinne's office. "Was the change made today?" "I'm not sure." "You don't have to answer." She looked relieved. "Your table is through those doors on the right." That sentence mattered later. So did the fact that she had not looked surprised. The sponsor table was near the front, close enough to the microphone for everyone seated there to be visible during the recognition segment. Corinne was already in her chair. Adrian sat on Alyssa's other side. Several co-workers were standing around with drinks. My place card was made of thick cream cardstock with a small company logo embossed at the top. Under the logo, in clean black lettering, it read, "Temporary husband. Table 2. The people nearest the card went quiet as I approached. One woman whispered, "Oh my God, he saw it." That was the first time I fully understood the joke was not for me. It was about me. Corinne lifted her champagne glass. "We like to keep things light at our dinners." "I can see that," I said. Alyssa gave me a bright public smile. "Sit down." I pulled out the chair, but didn't sit immediately. I took out my phone and photographed the card. I made sure the company logo, table number, and printed program beside it were visible in the frame. Corinne watched me. "Documenting the evening?" "Something like that." Adrian leaned toward Alyssa. "Careful. He might ask for a vote." A few people laughed. I sat down and placed the phone face up beside my water glass. Alyssa's smile stayed fixed, but under the noise of the room she whispered, "Please don't do this." "Do what?" "Make it weird." I looked at the card between us. "You think I'm the one making it weird? Just let it go." "Did you know?" "This is not the time." "That sounds like yes." Her jaw tightened while she continued smiling toward a passing executive. "Please just take it. We need tonight." "Not I'm sorry." "Not I'll fix it." "We need tonight." Dinner began with salads and a short welcome from Mr. Whitaker. He thanked the sponsors and spoke briefly about trust, long-term collaboration, and good judgment. He was seated at the front table, far enough away that he probably couldn't read my place card. The printed program listed a recognition segment after the main course. Alyssa and Adrian were named together under the heading Partnership Spotlight. My name appeared nowhere. That by itself didn't bother me. I wasn't there to be recognized. What bothered me was the story Alyssa had apparently told the room. She and Adrian were the strategic force behind the partnership, while I was a decorative spouse expected to sign whatever they placed in front of me. Corinne stood after the salads were cleared. She didn't go to the microphone. She stayed at our table and raised her glass high enough that nearby tables turned toward her. "To knowing where we belong," she said. "Some people drive the room. Some people make excellent background furniture." Laughter moved around the table. Corinne looked directly at me. "And some husbands deserve special recognition for understanding that a strong woman may occasionally need a more suitable partner for the spotlight." Adrian placed one hand over his heart in mock surprise. Someone at the next table lifted a phone and started recording. Corinne continued. "To Alyssa and Adrian, the professional marriage that probably makes more sense than the legal one." Glasses rose. Alyssa laughed. That hurt more than the card. Not because the joke was clever. It wasn't. Not because I believed Adrian was replacing me. He wasn't. It hurt because Alyssa had a choice in that second. She could have lowered her glass. She could have said, enough. She could have changed the subject. Instead, she looked delighted to be admired at my expense. Adrian leaned toward me. Relax, Jeremy. It's dinner. I looked at him. Then I assume nothing important is happening. His expression flickered. I sent Cole a picture of the card with one line beneath it. You were right. They made it a stage. Then I opened a co-worker's public social media story. She had already posted a short clip of Corinne's toast. The camera panned across the table just as everyone laughed. Alyssa was clearly visible. I saved a screenshot showing the account name, timestamp, and frame of the toast. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about the way people rewrite events once consequences arrive. The main course had just been served when Cole replied. His first message said, "Don't react yet." The second came with 3 screenshots. "You need to see this before they announce anything." The email subject line was seating and dinner remarks. Final. Cole knew one of the outside vendors helping with event materials. A reply all chain had been forwarded to the vendor by mistake because someone attached the wrong contact group. The vendor recognized my name from a previous conversation and sent it to Cole when the place card wording made him uncomfortable. The first screenshot showed Corinne asking, "Can we use temporary husband, or is that too sharp?" Adrian replied, "It lands if he sees it before the toast. Put me next to Alyssa so the visual works." Then came Alyssa's response. "Just don't make it too cruel. He still needs to sign after dinner." I read the line 2 times. Under it, in a later message, Corinne asked whether I might object during the partnership announcement. Alyssa wrote, "He won't. Jeremy hates scenes. He's not the strategic brain here, just the sentimental connection with signing power. I'll handle him." The room didn't spin. I didn't feel an urge to throw anything or stand up and shout. Everything became still. That was the moment my marriage stopped feeling wounded and started feeling calculated. Alyssa had not failed to defend me in a sudden, uncomfortable moment. She had approved the moment. She had negotiated how much humiliation would be safe. She had reassured her boss that my love, my patience, and my desire to avoid public conflict made me manageable. She had told them I would sign after dinner. I looked at her. She was listening to Adrian tell a story, nodding at the right moments, one hand resting near her wine glass. She looked relaxed. Why wouldn't she be? She believed she had already accounted for my reaction. Cole sent one more text. "Don't give them a meltdown. Give them the result of their judgment." I excused myself and walked toward the hallway outside the dining room. Alyssa glanced at me, but didn't follow. She probably assumed I was going to cool down in the restroom and return before the announcement. In the hallway, I opened the agreement email thread on my phone. I wrote to Mr. Whitaker and copied the relevant decision contact from my side. "Given the conduct displayed by representatives of your organization tonight, I will not be signing the agreement. I do not attach my name, authority, or resources to a team that treats personal humiliation as entertainment before requesting trust." I attached the place card photo. I added one more sentence. "Please suspend tonight's announcement pending review of the attached conduct and the representations made about my authority." Then I sent it. The timestamp was 8:42 p.m., 11 minutes before the recognition segment was scheduled to begin. I returned to the table and ate 2 bites of dinner. I wasn't hungry, but my hands were steady, and I wanted them to stay that way. Alyssa leaned close. "Are you done with dinner? With this mood?" I folded my napkin once. Almost. At 8:50, Mr. Whitaker checked his phone. I saw his expression change. He looked toward our table, then down at the screen again. Corinne didn't notice. She was speaking quietly with the event staff near the microphone. A server began placing dessert forks above the plates. Adrian adjusted his jacket and pulled the chair beside Alyssa slightly away from the table, ready to stand with her. The program page in front of me read, 8:53 p.m., partnership recognition. Corinne stepped to the microphone. "Tonight is about loyalty, image, and knowing who truly belongs at the table," she began. The room quieted. Alyssa has demonstrated the kind of strategic leadership that moves an organization forward. Alongside Adrian, she has helped guide a partnership that will shape our next 5 years. Adrian stood and offered Alyssa his hand. Alyssa rose with a polished smile. Then she looked at me. It wasn't a loving look. It was a warning. "Stay seated. Stay useful." I stood. I didn't take the microphone. I didn't need it. We were close enough to the front that my voice carried after the first few people turned toward me. Before anyone announces anything tonight, I said, you should know I won't be signing the agreement. Silence moved outward from our table. Corinne gave a short laugh into the microphone. I'm sorry, what agreement do you think you're referring to? The one your team needed my trust for. Her smile held, but only barely. I believe there may be some confusion about the process. There isn't. Alyssa hissed. Jeremy, sit down. I picked up the place card and held it where Mr. Whitaker could see it. This is what your team put in front of me before asking for my signature. Several heads turned toward Corinne. Alyssa's face lost its color. Don't ruin this. I looked at her. You made me the joke. I'm just ending the punchline. Corinne lowered the microphone. This is an internal culture issue being exaggerated by someone who clearly doesn't understand levity. Then explain the business judgment behind it to Mr. Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker was already standing. He wasn't smiling. I placed the card on the table in front of Alyssa. I came here as her husband, I said. I'm leaving as the person who will not be signing tonight. Then I walked out. Nobody clapped. Nobody laughed. That was the loudest part. In the lobby, I handed my ticket to the valet. Through the closed dining room doors, I could hear the muffled sound of the microphone being moved and someone asking for a brief pause in the program. Before the valet returned, Mr. Whitaker came through the doors. Jeremy. I turned. He stopped a few feet away, keeping his voice low. I need to understand whether this is personal or business. It became business when your team made judgment, discretion, and respect part of the negotiation. Corinne says this was a harmless dinner joke. I held up my phone. It was planned around the assumption that I could be publicly humiliated and still pressured to sign afterward. His expression hardened. Do you have evidence of that? I showed him the place card photo first. Then the saved clip from the social media story. Corinne's toast was clear. The laughter was clear. Alyssa's reaction was clear. Finally, I showed him the email screenshots. He read Corinne's question. Adrian's response. Alyssa's line about not making it too cruel because I still needed to sign. Then he reached the sentence where Alyssa called me a sentimental connection with signing power. Mr. Whitaker looked up. Alyssa represented your role differently. How? She said you were more symbolic than deciding. She indicated the approval was effectively complete and your signature was a formality she could secure. Then she lied to you and used me anyway. He read the screenshot again. Can you authenticate how you received this? I can connect you to the vendor who was mistakenly copied. I didn't access anything private. It was forwarded to Cole, and Cole sent it to me. He nodded once. Do not delete any of this. I won't. I'm going back inside. There will be no announcement tonight. I already requested that in writing. I saw it. The valet pulled my car around. I opened the door, then paused. Mr. Whitaker, I know other people worked on this deal. I'm not pretending the entire organization is Corinne. I understand. But I'm not signing under pressure tonight, and I won't reconsider while anyone involved is treating this as a marital tantrum. That is clear. He went back inside. Later, I learned exactly what happened after he returned. He took Corinne away from the microphone and said, quietly but within earshot of the sponsor table, there will be no announcement tonight. Corinne called it an overreaction. Mr. Whitaker answered, no. The overreaction was assuming humiliation was harmless. Staff removed the recognition cue cards. Dessert still came out to some of the room, but not to our table. The sponsor invoice was placed on hold. A calendar invitation went out before the dinner ended for a boardroom call the next morning titled Partnership Review. Alyssa called me 6 times before I reached home. The first voicemail was furious. How could you do that to me? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Call me now. The second was sharper. You need to fix this before morning. Mr. Whitaker thinks I misrepresented your authority. You know that's not what happened. The third sounded frightened. Jeremy, please. Corinne is blaming me. We need to talk before this gets worse. I didn't answer any of them. At home, I changed clothes, put my keys on the entry table, and drank a glass of water. My hands started shaking only after I was alone. That surprised me. I had imagined that standing up for myself would feel clean. It didn't. It felt like grief with better posture. I sat on the edge of the couch and looked around the room we had shared for 9 years. There were photographs of vacations, family dinners, Alyssa laughing with her head tilted toward me. A framed picture from our 5th anniversary sat on the shelf. I didn't suddenly stop loving the woman in those pictures. I just could no longer pretend she was the same woman who had approved that email. Leah called a little after midnight. She didn't ask for gossip. She asked, "Did you eat anything?" 2 bites of chicken. That doesn't count. I'm not hungry. Drink water. I did. Are you alone? For now. Her voice softened. Do you want me to come over? No. But thank you. What happened? I told her about the card, the toast, and the email. When I read Alyssa's line aloud, Leah went silent. Finally, she said, "She didn't forget to defend you. She decided not to." I know. That's different. I know. At 12:37 a.m., the front door opened. Alyssa came in still wearing her dinner dress. She dropped her bag on the entry bench and walked straight into the living room. What the hell was that? She demanded. I set my phone on the coffee table. Which part? You stood up in front of the entire company and destroyed the announcement. You planned to humiliate me in front of the entire company. It was one stupid joke. Then why did you need my signature after it? She froze. That was when she realized I knew. Her anger changed shape. Who sent you the email? So it's real. I didn't say that. You just asked who sent it. She looked away. Corinne came up with the card. You approved it. I said not to make it cruel. You also said I would still sign. Because I thought you understood how important tonight was. I understood exactly how important it was. That's why you used me. She paced toward the window, then turned back. You are making this sound much worse than it was. Read your own words. I was under pressure. From whom? Corinne. The whole team. Everyone wanted the dinner to feel fun, and Adrian was making suggestions, and I was trying to keep the deal moving. So you calculated how much disrespect I would tolerate. No. That is literally what the email says. She raised her voice. I didn't think you would actually walk away. The room went quiet. I nodded. That's the problem. You built the whole night on that assumption. She opened her mouth, but I continued. You knew I would be hurt. You knew I would be publicly mocked. You knew you needed something from me afterward. And you believed my love for you meant I was safe to use. That's not fair. It's exact. You should have handled it privately. You created it publicly. There were innocent people in that room whose work is tied to this partnership. I know. Then how could you pull the deal over a joke? I didn't pull it over a joke. I refused to sign after your team demonstrated terrible judgment and then lied about my authority. Those are business issues whether you like the timing or not. You wanted to punish me. I wanted to stop being useful to people who were humiliating me. She sank into a chair, but the softness that followed wasn't remorse. It was fear. Corinne says I misled leadership. You did. I was trying to make them see me as the person driving the partnership. So you minimized my role. I didn't think it mattered. It mattered enough for you to tell them you could control my signature. She rubbed both hands over her face. Adrian wrote the worst part of the toast. You laughed. Everyone laughed. That isn't a defense. She looked at me with tears forming. Are you really going to let one night destroy 9 years? I almost answered too quickly. Instead, I thought about every time I had raised a concern and been told I was insecure. Every time she had asked me to accept disrespect now and discuss it later, then refused to discuss it later. Every private contribution she had erased and every public joke she had protected. One night didn't do this, I said. One night gave me documentation. She cried then. But even through the tears, she kept trying to negotiate the meaning of what happened. She said Corinne had pressured her. She said Adrian had made the card sound funnier in planning. She said I should know how these events worked. She said I had embarrassed her more than she had embarrassed me. Finally, she said, I'm sorry you were hurt. I shook my head. That's not an apology for what you did. What do you want me to say? The truth. I just told you. No. You gave me 6 different excuses. The truth is one sentence. You knew about the card and let it happen because you thought I would still sign. She stared at the floor. I waited. She couldn't say it. That told me more than the tears. I slept in the guest room. Alyssa stayed in the living room for a long time, making calls in a low voice. At 2:18 a.m., my phone lit up with a message from Cole. Keep records. Do not sign anything. Do not let urgency become consent. The next morning, the partnership review call began at 8. I was not on it, but Mr. Whitaker called me afterward. His tone was formal. The announcement is suspended, he said. The agreement will not proceed in its current form. We are reviewing representations made during the negotiation and the conduct surrounding the event. Understood. Corinne has been removed as the point person for the partnership pending that review. I didn't celebrate. And Alyssa? Her role is also under review. She represented that your execution authority was ceremonial and assured several people that she controlled the outcome. That wasn't true. We know that now. He paused. I want to be clear. We are not taking action because a spouse was offended at dinner. We are taking action because senior employees coordinated a public humiliation of a required signatory, mischaracterized his authority, and planned to secure execution after the fact. That raises questions about judgment and governance. That's how I see it. Would you reconsider the agreement if a different team handled it? Not now. Not now or never. I'm not making a permanent decision while this review is active, but I will not restore the announcement, and I will not sign the existing agreement. That is clear. By noon, Alyssa's phone had been ringing almost continuously. Corinne called her 2 times. The first time, Alyssa closed herself in the bedroom. The second time, I heard enough through the door to understand that Corinne was blaming her. You told us he was symbolic, Corinne said loudly enough for me to hear. You said you could manage him. Alyssa answered, you approved the joke. I approved levity based on your representation of the risk. Don't call it levity now. I suggest you focus on correcting the damage you created. The call ended with Alyssa shouting, you created it too. Corinne had no interest in shared responsibility once responsibility had a paper trail. Adrian was even faster to retreat. Alyssa sent him several messages. I didn't read them, but she showed me his reply because she was furious. I'm sorry this got personal, but I don't want to be part of a domestic issue. Please keep my name out of conversations with leadership unless they contact me directly. Alyssa stared at the screen. He helped write the joke. He was involved when everyone was laughing. I said. He's acting like I did this alone. He liked the role when it was flattering. Adrian later admitted in the review that he had suggested the visual of sitting beside Alyssa and had helped phrase the toast. He insisted he believed it was harmless because Alyssa approved it and described me as someone who understood the dynamic. Nobody wanted the joke once it had consequences. Corinne called it culture. Adrian called it dinner humor. Alyssa called it pressure. The people at the table called it something that got out of hand. Not one of them called it what it was until the email forced them to. Planned humiliation. Over the next 3 days, Alyssa's messages changed tone even though we were living under the same roof. The first were demands. You need to call Whitaker. You need to explain that this was marital stress. You cannot destroy years of work because you were angry. Then came panic. Corinne is trying to remove me from the account. They canceled my leadership meeting. Please tell me what you said to them. Finally, the messages became almost apologetic. I know I handled it badly. I should have stopped the joke. I never wanted you to feel disposable. But even then, she could not write the sentence I had asked for. I knew. I approved it. I thought you would take it because I still needed you. Instead, she left me a voicemail late one night. I didn't think you'd actually leave, she said. I thought you would be angry, and we'd fight, and then we'd fix it. I didn't think you would walk away from the deal. I didn't think you would walk away from me. There it was again. Not regret that she had done it. Shock that I had limits. I met with an attorney and began organizing our finances, property records, and the communications connected to the dinner. I did not empty accounts. I did not lock Alyssa out of anything. I did not contact her coworkers to embarrass her further. I sent her one email. From this point forward, all discussions about finances, property, and separation need to be in writing. I will not participate in hallway arguments or sign documents under pressure. Any conversation about repairing the marriage must begin with a direct acknowledgement that you knew about the place card, approved the joke, and expected me to sign afterward. She came into the guest room 10 minutes later. So that's it, she asked. No, that was it when you approved the joke and asked me to pay for it. I didn't ask you to pay for it. You expected my signature to fund the professional benefit you were celebrating. She folded her arms. You're twisting everything into the worst possible version. The email is not my version. She looked like she wanted to argue, but there was nowhere left for the argument to go. A week after the dinner, Alyssa was removed from the partnership account while the internal review continued. Her expected recognition disappeared. The leadership role she thought the dinner would help secure was postponed indefinitely. Corinne remained employed, but she lost control of the deal and was required to answer questions from senior leadership and HR about the event planning. The issue was not treated as a comedy mistake. It was treated as reputational risk and evidence of poor decision-making. Adrian kept his position, but his name was removed from the partnership presentation, and he was instructed not to contact me. His careful distance from Alyssa became permanent. When she needed support, he became very busy. The company did not collapse. Hundreds of employees did not lose their jobs overnight. Life continued, which made the consequences feel more believable and, in some ways, more severe. Alyssa still had to walk into rooms where people remembered the canceled announcement. Corinne still had to explain why her idea of leadership included testing whether a required signatory would tolerate being degraded. Adrian still had to sit across from colleagues who had read his email about making the visual work. The laughing audience became a room full of people claiming they had never been comfortable with the joke. Mr. Whitaker contacted me once more and asked whether I would consider a different version of the partnership after the review. I declined. I told him the organization was free to approach other funding sources or return with a new proposal in the future, but I would not attach my signature to the existing agreement. He accepted the answer without trying to flatter me. That mattered. Alyssa did eventually say the sentence. It happened 2 weeks after the dinner, at the kitchen table where she used to rehearse speeches. She looked exhausted. There were no earrings, no polished tone, no audience. I knew about the card, she said. I approved it. I thought you would be angry but still signed because you always try to keep the peace. I said nothing. She continued. I told myself it was harmless because I didn't want to admit I was using you. That was the first honest thing she had said since the dinner. It did not repair the marriage. Honesty is necessary, but sometimes it arrives after trust has already been spent. She asked whether counseling could help. I told her counseling might help us separate without turning every conversation into a fight, but I was not promising reconciliation. She cried and said she still loved me. I believed her. That was part of what made it painful. People can love you and still become comfortable using you. Love does not automatically correct entitlement. Sometimes it only gives entitlement a softer place to hide. We agreed on a move-out schedule and kept all financial discussions in writing. There were no screaming matches in the driveway, no dramatic social media posts, no public apology tour. I kept the evidence for the people directly involved and refused to circulate it for entertainment. Cole checked in over coffee a few days after Alyssa moved most of her things out. You look terrible, he said. Thank you. Sleeping? Not much. Regret it. I thought about the question. I regret that it happened. That's not what I asked. No, I don't regret leaving the table. He nodded. Good. Leah asked me something similar when she came by with food. Do you regret leaving? I regret staying quiet long enough for her to think I never would. That was the hardest part to admit. Alyssa was responsible for what she did. Corinne was responsible for creating the test. Adrian was responsible for helping stage it. The people who laughed were responsible for choosing the safest side of the room. But I had spent too long teaching them that my boundaries were flexible. Every time I accepted a public insult to avoid a private fight, I made the next insult easier. Every time I let Alyssa call disrespect humor, I helped her believe the label mattered more than the effect. I thought dignity meant refusing to create drama. What dignity actually required was refusing to remain where disrespect was the price of admission. The separation is moving forward. The agreement remains unsigned. Alyssa is dealing with the professional consequences of misrepresenting my authority and approving the dinner setup. Corinne no longer controls the partnership. Adrian is nowhere near Alyssa now that standing beside her is no longer flattering. I don't feel victorious. I feel sad, angry, and relieved in uneven amounts. I still remember the woman at the kitchen counter who used to throw a dish towel at me and say, "We did it." I loved her. Part of me probably always will. But the woman at that sponsor table had turned me into a prop, calculated how much humiliation I would swallow, and counted my signature before asking for it. She wanted me to prove I belonged at her table. Instead, I remembered I was allowed to leave it. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.